Exit algorithms. Scale smarter. Sell stronger.
Welcome to Exit Algorithms, the podcast where we decode what it really takes to unlock growth, streamline operations, and prepare your business for a high-value exit. I'm your host, Pete Vera, and today I'm joined by Dan Cahalan, Sales Director at Swisslog, one of the world's leading warehouse automation companies. Swisslog operates in over 50 countries and is behind some of the most sophisticated automated distribution systems running today. Dan, super excited to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Pete. It's great to be here. I will say you had a mustache at Modex, which is why I shaved my beard into a mustache, so we do double barrel mustaches here. But I understand with the wedding coming up, you don't want the mustache tan line, so it's all right. I will immediately go shave it in the bathroom after this, but we'll let it ride for the...
Yes, sir. Maybe we'll have to do a follow-on one day, and I'll grow it back.
Yeah, please. I was really hoping we could do like a Mario and Luigi looking side panel here with the red mustache and the brown one. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you mind starting off? Can you share a bit about your background and career journey? Yeah. What led you to Swisslog?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Ohio. I went to Purdue for industrial engineering. I actually started in aeronautical engineering and then decided that the grain size of what you study and can control in aeronautical was a little too fine for me. And I really wanted to kind of zoom out and have a more systems perspective. So the degree is actually now called industrial and systems engineering. At the time that I went, it was just industrial engineering. I interned for GE in South Carolina, which was your neck of the woods. Interned in fastener manufacturing for a summer and finally ended up interning with Kohl's department stores, which is, for those of you unaware, that's a retailer headquartered in Milwaukee that has about 1,150 stores nationally in the U.S. So we're interned with them, worked for Kohl's for about 6 years as an industrial engineer, as a project manager for deploying automated systems that we were purchasing turnkey automated systems from others. So project managed and did a lot of design for those facilities for primarily Kohl's e-com fulfillment. Spent some time there, and then I realized that what I really, really loved to do was learn a business extremely well. In this case, it was Kohl's, and then design solutions that fit that business's needs, and then kind of support that long term, learn how the system behaves over time, try to squeeze the most out of it. So my experience at Kohl's was tremendous, but we were only doing that for a building every maybe 2 years, and I really wanted to kind of increase the frequency at which I was doing that process of really thoroughly understand a business, design an automated solution for it, deploy that automated solution, and watch it show up in 3D, which is like the most unbelievable experience, is when you get to design this like beautiful automated system and then watch it run. There's nothing better. Anyways, I moved over to the integrator side to be able to do that on behalf of companies like Kohl's. I worked for Bastion Solutions for 4 years and was really fortunate to be able to sell pretty much the whole breadth of what Bastion had to offer, and really, really loved and did get that experience of, instead of working on one solution every 2 years, I was working on 5 solutions at a time for 4 years, So got to do that at Bastion for 4 years, which was great. It was an excellent experience there. About a year ago, I transitioned over to Swisslog to approach the industry from a different angle, from a different company with different primary verticals, different value proposition, and different software. So really have loved my time at Swisslog. My role now is titled Sales Director, and effectively I'm responsible for the commercial and technical offering to a customer for an integrated system. So, from the point of first engagement I always make up a company, I call it Bob's Boot Mart, says, hey, we have a warehouse we think we want to automate. They engage us, I'm immediately involved, and then I work with them through data analysis, visits, concepting, pricing, scheduling, and then eventually when the project sells, I'll hand it off and it'll be executed by a really talented execution team at Swisslog.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that story. I'm sure it helps tremendously, or it's probably a requirement to have that engineering background, or at least understand the technical aspects of the job well, right?
Yeah, it's pretty helpful. I think the best thing that anybody that operates a warehouse can do is hire an industrial engineer, someone that's dedicated to, observe the operation, recommend things that can change to make it more efficient. They pay for themselves in a month typically, the first month of just improvements of like, why are we doing it this way? Being an engineer is really helpful, but ultimately I think having kind of a systems mindset, which is a more like qualitative feature, I think is really important. And actually, I will say that having worked on the customer side at Kohl's really prepared me well for doing the integrator side design, because, you know, like I've lived at a building and supported an operation and felt the pain of having the building director call me at 2 o'clock in the morning and be like, what the hell, dude, the print applies are down or whatever. You know, like I think that experience of understanding, like, you know, transparently the pain that you go through in deploying warehouse management systems or new processes, I think is really helpful in how to design them to be robust for the future. But yeah, I'm super, super fortunate to have found this industry that I absolutely love. Like, it does not feel like work a lot of the times to get to go see a site, recommend improvements, envision with a customer how their solution can change, or how their operating model can change. And yeah, it's a joy.
Definitely. Yeah. No, and that was actually going to be one of my questions. Does it help having that customer experience first, before entering sales? Or are there any lessons you learned from your time at Kohl's?
I have found it to be critically important, because, I mean, for the reasons that I just mentioned of being able to put yourself in the shoes of an operator. But I think there's a lot of, softer stuff that can't necessarily be trained when it comes to designing automation solutions, that you kind of just have to look and feel and see of, the way that a very small change to how a user's workstation is set up can have drastic impacts. Like maintenance access is something that I think is a big difference that I see between those that have experience in warehouses on the customer side to those that don't. It's like, have you designed a way for someone to change this motor out on this piece of conveyor? So yeah, I think that it's been extremely helpful to have had that experience. I think that there are a lot of people around the industry that on the integrator side that have that, and then I think the folks that don't, the most successful ones are the ones that are able to really empathize with the folks that are running operations, those that intentionally get operations involved ahead of time and make sure that what they believe and prioritize is considered in the design. It all comes down to how well you are listening and empathizing with and understanding an operation.
What does a typical engagement look like with Swisslog? And is there a certain size of business where it makes more sense? Or I'd love to just kind of get an overview of the type of customers you work with.
Yeah, so Swisslog specifically, and like, I know we're talking more generally, so I'll try to keep the sales pitch part to a minimum here. But yeah, I think Swisslog is, and the reason I'll answer it this way is because each person, provider, integrator, OEM in the industry kind of approaches sale differently. They have different verticals that they're really strong in, different technologies they offer, ways they go to market. So Swisslog specifically is a master solution integrator, which is, we manufacture some of our own components, but ultimately we provide an integrated system of things that we manufacture and things that we procure. So we manufacture a really effective unit load crane and pallet conveyor, but then we also procure and integrate with our controls and software, AutoStore, Eurofork four-way shuttle, conveyor, robotics. So I think there are people kind of in that cohort of integrator, like Bastion I used to work for example, Ford and others. And then there's like, on the OEM side, which are people that sell primarily what they manufacture. I'm sure you can think or name a few of those. And Swisslog exists kind of somewhere in the middle, which is OEM backbone of things we manufacture, but also things that we integrate like AutoStore. And just to be fair to, like, Bastion manufactures great conveyor and robotics, for example. So I think everybody approaches the industry a little bit differently. For Swisslog, I think because we are providing an overall solution that is tied together with our software, which is called Sync, a lot of our engagements oftentimes start with customers who have some data about their operation. They have some vision of what they want to do in the future, and I think they're really looking for the integrator to kind of guide them towards, hey, we've evaluated all of what you want to do, what your particular order profile and customer base looks like, and here's a couple of potential solution options. So the way that we engage with a customer depends a lot on, I think, their own experiences in general with automation. So like when Kohl's would approach an integrator, having worked for Kohl's, like they have huge experience with automation at a lot of different levels, right? So as opposed to my usual example of like Bob's Boot Mart that may not have any automation may be approaching it for the first time. So the amount of, mutual education we have to do or site visits we have to do, it also often depends on whether that organization has their own engineering infrastructure. So like when I was on the customer side, I would lightly engineer a solution. I'd know approximately what I wanted, and I'd come and say, here's approximately what I want, but I'd like for you to beat it up and make it really come to life in 3D. And then I would say there's people on the complete other end of the spectrum that come and say, like, here is exactly what I want. I've already drawn it. Please sketch this for me and tell me how much it's going to cost. So I think we, as integrators, you kind of have to meet a customer where they're at. And ultimately, you want to build a relationship, understand what they are really seeking to accomplish in order to be an effective advisor for where they could go. It is the thing that is incredible about it is that the most successful solutions, relationships are the ones that are like very openly collaborative. That are the ones where you take the time to really work together to concept and reiterate, and it kind of takes a mutual investment, which is the integrators will kind of put up a lot of reiterative design work, which frankly costs a lot of money on our side to have resources do that. But then also on the customer side, there's transparency about, how the bid is progressing or how they're like where the price point needs to be. So I think the most successful implementations are those that are the most collaborative. So I kind of got off the path of your question a little bit, but I'll just say like it's really an it depends thing on the customer's experience, how transparent, collaborative it is as opposed to transactional. And I think lastly, it often depends on what the customer is seeking to accomplish. Like some people are just saying, hey, I want to understand if automation's even in the future for me. So like, can you tell me if this thing that I want is $5 million or $50 million or $500 million or $500,000 for that matter? That's what I'd call like a ROM level of detail, where we'll do some concepting, a little bit of light data, we'll make a lot of assumptions, and then come up with something that they can at least inform, are we in the right ballpark? And then there's another level of fidelity called budget, which is another step further, which would be, hey, we did more data analysis, we visited your site, you visited ours, we've kind of decided on a concept, here's approximately what it's going to cost based on the real recent costs coming for this type of equipment. And then there's a firm engagement, which would be like an RFP, where someone says, we already know we are going to do a building, we already have a budget approved for the most part, we just need a price that is completely accurate so we can decide between 2 or 3 vendors, put one on contract and run. And so the higher the level of fidelity, the more intense the effort is, and to be honest, the more detailed the data analysis needs to be, the more scrutinized the documentation needs to be, et cetera. Typical engagement starts with openness. It starts with a willingness to be transparent about here's the data here's me as the customer, this is the data that I have, and the integrator saying, hey, with that data we can do X, Y, and Z, but we're going to need to make assumptions on A, B, and C. Are you good with this? So like I think that the most open and transparent and time both sides can dedicate to each other, the better an engagement goes in any case.
Yeah, I think one of the takeaways I got at Modex where we met was it's not like automation isn't necessarily just for Amazon scale operations. I'm curious from your perspective, is there like a certain metric you look at, whether it's revenue, whether it's square footage of the warehouse, to where it makes sense to start automating? Or would you say, start automating from day one in your operation?
Who is automation really for? Take my answer with a grain of salt because I sell automation, right? But like, I really think that automation is for everyone. Like at some level, there is something that you can do to improve your operation. I said at the top, like hire an industrial engineer. That's not necessarily automation, but there's process improvement. I think that in terms of like actual mechanical automation, there's something for everybody. Like you could buy a $5,000 to $20,000 AGV to do something, or you can buy a $50 million rack supported building pallet ASRS. So I think that any business can probably find something where automation is justified in some way. I think oftentimes the mismatch is between the vision for automation and what is actually justified. So like not everyone is going to have justification for a $10 million auto store, right? Like you may have justification for a lighter duty sold as a service like AMR style picking robot that you follow behind and pick into, right? So I think there's some level of automation that makes sense for most, if not all, operations. The things that I really look for is not necessarily square footage or company revenue. I think it's more, I start with what are the problems that you're seeking to solve, what are your goals, and I think if you're really looking for like who is a candidate for automation and who is not, it's more of a question of I would ask like, show me what you're seeking to accomplish. And I think that in terms of like justification, the easy ones, and I mentioned this when in the panel in Modex, but I think like there are what I would call like the frequent flyer justification methods, right? Like removal of FTEs. For those of you that don't know that term, that's full-time equivalent. So like you have, that's headcount reduction transparently, or if you're growing, it's preventing needing to increase headcount to accommodate for growth. So you're solving, I mean, simple ROI based on labor. There's labor availability that's also an issue. That's like, again, these are in my frequent flyer categories. There's also, accommodating for growth. There's storage density. And then I think there's more abstract things that you could evaluate, like saving on cost of quality to customer, where you may have a big issue with errors to customer. Like oftentimes automation is a way to reduce errors and can measurably reduce errors. It's an ergonomic issue where, if you're picking TVs off, or refrigerators off one pallet onto another, like automation may be justified on the basis of reducing ergonomic strain on individuals. There's also, kind of safety entitlement, so to speak, which is like you're running into rack every 10 days and you have to replace rack. Like, what's the cost of the rack you're replacing and the labor and the downtime? So I think really to come back to the core of the question is, who is automation for? It is for anyone really that can think of a collection of things that could justify automation, that is willing to kind of accept the automation that they are a fit for.
So starting out from the goal that you're trying to achieve.
Yep.
Do you see any mistakes companies make when trying to automate, an existing facility?
I think that mistakes get made by everyone in these situations. Small mistakes, the severity and impact of them vary, of course. But yeah, I think that people. I mentioned this in the panel, but I think a big mistake that people make is thinking that there will be a silver bullet solution to their entire problem. So I call this the silver bullet fallacy, which is like, hey, I have this big warehouse with all these different like sizes of boxes and units and what pallets and whatever else. Like, I need a solution that solves all of this. Like, typically the solution that solves 100% of your problems is going to be 5 times the solution that solves 90% of your problems. So I think a big mistake that people make is not saying like, hey, it is still acceptable to take the bigger, weirder freight that's more difficult to automate and still handle that manually. I think a really good example of this is like, let's say you're an automaker that has spare parts, like handling nuts, bolts, cables, spark plugs, like super easy to automate that for spare parts distribution. The hood of a car, extremely difficult. So if you go look at a building that's a parts distribution center, for example, and you say, I want to automate this building, automating 90% of the throughput, which is the small parts, let's just throw a fake number out there, $20 million, right? Automating all of the big parts for 10% of the throughput, $50 million. The mistake people make is thinking that they have to solve the whole problem all at once. I think another one that happens kind of on a more like a deployment basis is not involving operations early enough. So like, I'm sure anyone who listens to this has an operations team, maybe part of an operations team. I think that a huge mistake people make is not bringing operations in to weigh in on the requirements that the system has to accomplish, that an automated system has to accomplish, because you'll miss critical components, right? Like the operations team might know that you need to scan the lot number when you're picking an item, for example. The difference between picking up an item and putting it in a box or picking it up and scanning a lot number could be, half, the user could be doing half the performance. And at that point, you've drastically under-designed your system. So I think getting operations involved early to not only weigh in on how the system needs to be designed, but then to also really have some ownership and buy-in as to what they're eventually going to need to end up running, I think is really an important thing to do that a lot of people kind of fail to do. And then I think another one is that I think there's this, especially as you start to get into bigger automated solutions, there's this perception, it's an easy perception that if, let's say I have a task that a human is doing and I would like to automate that task, I think oftentimes the thought is the automation has to be human shaped, like a robotic arm or an AGV that travels where a forklift otherwise would have traveled. And then the last one I would say is that, just speaking of the human, like humans are incredibly valuable, dexterous, wonderful machines. Like the dexterity, the amount of time since robotic arms have come out where humans are still picking shows that human dexterity is something incredible, right? So I think the other mistake that people make is they really get attracted to this idea of a lights out warehouse, And I think ultimately, like, the humans are so valuable at solving many, many problems that considering there is a failure to consider that humans can be a really important part of an automated ecosystem, of an automated systems ecosystem. So yeah, I think that's another big mistake that I see, is not only thinking that you could replace a human working position with something that's shaped like a human, but also that humans have no place in the warehouse, because that's simply not true. Most automated warehouses that I've ever been in solving incredible problems can still have dozens, hundreds of people there that are doing tasks that humans are so uniquely qualified for. So anyways, that's just my thought after having been in many, 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 many warehouses.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, very detailed answer, a lot of examples. That concept of lights out, I think maybe not all of our listeners are familiar with, but can you describe that a little more? And does it really exist?
Yeah, it's a good question. Lights out is like, if you imagine, I'm trying to think of a good example from a movie or something, but if you like close your eyes and imagine like robotic arms attaching doors to cars where there's no people that you can see, right? Like where everything is done in an automated fashion, that is what people call lights out, which the term is just like the robots don't need lights to work, but the people do. So that's where the term comes from. If you have manufacturing style tasks that are really consistent, don't require decision making, do not have a lot of permutations in how they operate, like there's probably warehouses, manufacturing lines that are close to lights out. I think that a lot of the things that Swisslog, Bash, and Dematic, others in kind of the material handling industry interact with, a lot of those warehouses, whether they're manufacturing or otherwise, the whole point is to solve for variability, right? But I think the more variability there is in terms of size of product, what you have to do with it, how it is ordered, the harder and harder that becomes. So consider like an automotive manufacturing example, right? Like when you're manufacturing a car, I don't remember the exact number, but it's like every 50 seconds a car runs off the line, right? It's going to be largely the same every time. Maybe the color changes, maybe the trim changes, whatever. But like it's all what I call linear, like it's all moving in one direction. And a lot of warehouses operate in what I would call like non-linear fashion, which is like, let's say you have 100,000 SKUs, SKU being unique items. So like this shirt in this size and this color is a SKU. The other 8 sizes are different SKUs and the other 8 colors are different SKUs. So this shirt could have 64 SKUs, right, in that case. So consider a retailer that has 600,000 SKUs, right? Anybody goes online and can purchase any combination of those SKUs, and they'll need to be picked and packed in a certain way. Maybe there's a gift wrap, maybe there's a label, maybe there's a sample. So there's all of this variability that goes into combining this order into a box to ship to you that is not necessarily linear, because you're going to have to pull it out, put it into a storage position, then pick it, then pack it. Maybe there's a wrong, you put it back, maybe there's cancel. There's just so much uncertainty is basically the entire point of the automation, is to weather uncertainty. So I think in situations like that where there's quite a bit of variability, you oftentimes need humans to solve the dexterity, as opposed to automation where it's like move this thing from here to here over and over and over again. That kind of stuff has been automated forever, right? Like you can go on How It's Made and watch chips get made, and like the people are basically there to maintain the machine. So I think that in warehousing specifically, and maybe in 50 years or 25 years or 10 years, who knows, there's drastic changes in that regard. But I think in many, many warehouses, humans are still going to be involved. And so part of our goal is to design a user experience for those that are involved to be as efficient, as ergonomically comfortable, and as safe as possible.
Agreed. Yeah, no, it's awesome. Very interesting and exciting to see where it's headed. But yeah, that makes sense. And most operations have a variety of different SKUs and types of boxes, packages, so forth, that would make a lights out facility very challenging.
It's a matter of who is automation fit for. It's more of what automation are you fit for?
And we touched on it a little bit, but what are some of the main, ROIs that warehouse operation can expect from implementing automation and, for example, working with Swisslog?
Yeah.
What would they expect to get? Because it's not just cost savings, right? It's also ability to generate more revenue in some cases.
Yeah, I think what you're exactly correct. I think cost save, like a very simple ROI calculation, how much am I investing divided by how much am I saving? It could be recurring basis labor, it could be storage, it could be, I no longer have to buy 200 forklifts at $15,000 a piece or whatever. Like that's your relatively simple ROI analysis. I think the more abstract version is adding in additional components, as I mentioned, like safety, ergonomics, etc. The other thing that automation can do is you're able to increase your pick facings, for example. So like in my situation of 600,000 SKUs, like close your eyes and consider a grocery store. A grocery store might have 25,000 SKUs or something, right? Like imagine having to store whatever that difference is, from 25,000 to 600,000, multiply your grocery store by that much. And like that's how many individual slots that you're going to need to put in there for a human to go by and pick that product. And then you'll need to create aisles and more floors and fire suppression, etc. Automation really allows you to scale your pick face quantity in a way that is much more affordable incrementally, as well as much more densely. So one really interesting thing that's happened that is like a constant pendulum in warehousing and fulfillment is the difference between really big sites that have a ton of SKUs that are centralized, like mega warehouses, for example. And then the other swing of the pendulum is localized fulfillment. So like, hey, we want it really close to the customer to ship it to them now. And there's this like kind of constant pendulum in the industry of like, we're going to build these mega warehouses so that we can take the 5 SKUs that Dan ordered on Kohls.com and get them all in the same box. Or swing the other way and say, Dan ordered these today, he expects them tomorrow, we're going to ship them from the nearby store. So I think like there's this constant pendulum swing depending on customer expectation at the time, depending on how much it costs to ship at the time. So those kind of fluctuations, I think automation allows you to be a little bit more flexible and reactive to. Whether it's at the node level, so you put a small piece of automation in a store that can now hold more SKUs and fulfill more locally, or whether it's at the major node level to say, hey, we're shifting back into the major node, we need to increase the amount that we store here. So I think that there's a lot of flexibility that automation allows. But yeah, I would say on the abstract basis, a couple of other things that just immediately come to mind is like, you can flatten the curve of how much staffing you need to accommodate peak periods. So people often talk about labor availability. What they don't really talk about is what that means, which is like, yes, on a day-to-day basis, I might have a difficult time staffing, but what's especially hard to staff is during Black Friday and the 2 weeks following, when everybody and their dog needs to quintuple their staffing to handle a quintupling in demand. So what automation can allow you to do is, instead of 5xing your normal non-peak operation to peak, you could maybe 2 or 3x your non-peak operation to peak. So it helps you solve that kind of labor shortage ramp up. Additionally, it helps the surplus labor that you hire. Automated jobs are typically much faster to get up to like a reliable planned rate, and the quality is also typically much higher. When I present you a bin and say, pick 2 of these, that's typically much more reliable than me saying, go walk a quarter mile and pick 2 of the white V-neck t-shirt out of this specific bin that you need to go find. The other thing that kind of automation allows you to do is potentially you can collapse yourself down into a shift that is better for associates, right? So instead of having to run a day and a night shift and manage both of those, staff both of those, maybe automation allows you to have enough throughput in an hour that running 8 hours is as effective as running 16. And you could say, you guys don't have to be on nights anymore. You can be on days. So I think there's a lot of like kind of soft benefits to automating, because automation at its core is basically going to increase throughput per hour. It's going to increase storage density in the same space, and it's going to be an ergonomically more effective solution for your operators. So like, if you have a specific ship cutoff window that you have to ship by, let's say you have to ship by 5 p.m., you get orders at 3 p.m., this is much easier to accomplish with automation than having someone run across the building, try to pick it, try to build it into a wave, even in a semi-manual operation. Automation allows you to empower your operations to be more flexible to changing order profiles, to achieve their goals in a way that is more consistent without having to ramp up staffing and have every day be a fire drill.
Love it. Yeah, no, thank you. That's so many good ideas, insightful things to think about, as business owners are listening and looking to grow their operations. I know we're coming up on time here. We probably could talk all day. There's a lot of other topics I wanted to bring up. But
Perfect. We'll just stop recording. We can just chat for the next 3 or 4 hours or something. But
sounds good. Yeah, at the end though, I always ask my guests to condense what the conversation was into one practical takeaway. So yeah, what's one practical takeaway business owners can implement and start automating their operations?
I would say just don't go it alone. Like I think it's really easy to kind of get caught up in trying to research using Claude, like what automation should I use or whatever. I would say don't go it alone. There's many knowledgeable people in the industry, both suppliers, integrators who can help you, but also others potentially in your like cohort of companies that potentially have automated in a way that you haven't, that you could learn from. And a lot of the people on the supplier side are more than happy to have a conversation with you, briefly discuss what you've got going on and tell you if they think you're a good fit for what they offer. And if not, recommend to somebody else. Like I recommend, hey, go talk to this labor management person, go talk to this ACR person, go talk to this other company. Like I do that maybe for half of the people that I interact with. So I would say don't go it alone, and be prepared for, to walk a journey with the support of a lot of people, both in your cohort, on the customer side. One of your previous podcasts, Pete, a guy said, don't befriend your competition, I think was what somebody else said on your podcast. And I thought that was like a really great line that I think goes to this don't go it alone thing, which is like a rising tide raises all boats in this industry, I think. And so like befriend your competition, ask them what they're doing. You can share learnings, they share learnings. And I think it's a really great way to go.
Well said. Yeah, thanks so much for your time today, Dan. Where's the best place listeners can find you at?
Sure, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just shoot me a message. My name is down there. Just look for Dan Cahalan at Swisslog. And Pete, thanks. It's been a pleasure. Absolutely love the opportunity to talk about this. And if please don't hesitate to reach out if you ever want to get into other stuff at other detail that your audience might potentially be looking to find out.
Absolutely, Dan. Sounds good. Be in touch.
Thanks, Pete.
Exit algorithms. Scale smarter. Sell stronger.